obviously when you're on carnivore, your cholesterol goes up, and
if you're fit.
If you're fit.
Only
Okay.
if you're fit.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why's that?
That was that lean mass hyper-responder study that we were talking about before. This is just something that's been observed. They found that people that were on these, animal-based, high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diets, because when you go on a ketogenic diet, you get rid of carbohydrates. What do you replace it with? Fat and protein, right? Where does that fat and protein come from? Typically meat. You could do it on a vegetarian diet, but it's very difficult. You basically have to drink canola oil and take a bunch of supplements and things like that, and because it's very deficient. But so they don't. So all these ketogenic diets that in the studies anyway, we look at thousands of randomized control. There is no diet that has been studied more rigorously than the ketogenic diet. And a carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet, and it's specifically a meat-based ketogenic diet, which is all these studies are meat-based ketogenic diets. And so when they found this, if people were on these high-fat meat-based ketogenic diets, their cholesterol came up, LDL came up, and HDL came up, and triglycerides went down. They're like, well, hold on, all that stuff looks good. And their insulin came down, and their leptin came down, their testosterone went up, and their thyroid improved, and they lost weight, and they're feeling good, and all these diseases reverse. And it's like, well, why are we saying this is a bad thing? That doesn't make sense. And so a guy named Dave Feldman started asking that question, like, well, hold on a second. Well, maybe this is just a different cohort. Maybe this doesn't apply to these people they're eating this way. Maybe cholesterol isn't, it's just like cholesterol up equals heart disease. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's different. Maybe there's more going on to it, which are all fair questions to ask. You shouldn't just blindly go, no, that's what we've always thought. So that's obviously nothing's ever going to change. Like, things change all the time. We constantly are revamping our understanding of things. And so he just said, okay, we'll see these people. They all seem to be lean. They all seem to be healthy. They all seem to be people that have reversed a lot of disease and are really healthy now. And so they're lean mass, but their cholesterol is just spiking up. So they're hyper responding to this. They call it lean mass hyper responders. That's the name that they came up with. And so they just found that these people, and they actually did study looking at this, and they found that people that actually had a higher BMI, were overweight, actually had lower response to their LDL, actually would have lower LDL, and as they got healthier and fitter and skinnier, that the LDL came up and up and up. And so it's like, well, that's going in the direction of good health. Why are we saying that that's a bad thing? And so all these things are pointing towards good health, and we're saying, no, it's bad. Shut it down. Go back to having diabetes and cancer. Just no. It's like, that's obviously we're looking at this wrong. So they started looking at it and saying, okay, well, why don't we just follow these people? There are a lot of people out there that aren't going back, that don't believe the cholesterol theory of heart disease, and they're going to roll with this. And so let's study them. And Dave Feldman was included in that. He's like, yeah, I'm one of these people. I feel great. I'm not going anywhere else. And so they have, I don't know how many people, like well over 100, I believe. And they've just followed these people for years. I probably should have joined in as well, because I'd be in that category. You'd be in that category, And so they followed these guys for years, on average 4.7 years, being on a high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet with high so-called high LDL cholesterol, up in the range of familial hypercholesterolemia, where people that have genetically high, so-called high LDL, I think it's perfectly normal. I think that's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Mine was 8 for the record. The total cholesterol was over 10.
Yeah,
but just the LDL. Hey.
Yeah, that'd be quite typical of this. Yeah, so I'd say you would be in that category. Yeah. And in those people, they fall on average 4.7 years with this high cholesterol on this high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet. They found no progression in their atherosclerosis. They did angiograms and said no progression. And in fact, the trend was decline of atherosclerosis, was actually reversal of atherosclerosis. So it's still preliminary. They're still doing these things. They've been doing this for years, but they're still getting data points, and they're publishing along the way. Now, the most recent data dump was that there was no progression. And I have one of the top lipidologists in the world dealing with this, and he is of that camp that LDL directly causes heart disease. And he said in the write-up, he said, look, I still believe that LDL is a direct cause, a dose-dependent response cause of atherosclerosis. But it appears that in this population, it's not. you know? And so they're going to keep looking at that. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, the reason that people say that cholesterol causes heart disease is based on epidemiology, and they have actually no business saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, because there are no studies that can show causation that have showed that relationship, that cause and effect relationship. None. There's nothing. There are no studies extant in the literature showing that there is a cause and effect relationship between cholesterol and heart disease. So, but this Mendelian randomized, it's not just because you put the word randomized in it doesn't mean it's a randomized controlled trial. It's epidemiology, it's observation. And in fact, a lot of these things, they looked at, well, these people have genetics that generally we associate with higher cholesterol. And that was like, so you didn't check their cholesterol? You just went on their genetics, and usually they have higher. So you didn't check their freaking cholesterol. So we're stopping there. I mean, it's just like, no, we're not even going to read the rest of this paper. It's a waste of time. There's nothing that shows cause and effect. Nothing. There are exactly 5 studies that were randomized controlled trials that could show cause and effect. 5. They were done pre-1980s.
And we're still going off that.
No, we're not going off them at all, because they didn't show it.
Yeah.
They showed no relationship between lowering cholesterol, lowering LDL, and developing heart disease. And 2 of them showed harm. One of the best ones, this was with thousands of patients. They were all with thousands of patients. One was with nearly 10,000 patients. It was 9,600 patients that were institutionalized over a period of over 5 years. And so the researcher could perfectly control their meals and their ins and outs, because they were in like institutions, right? And they controlled every single meal. And so they had like a more traditional diet with, you know, butter and fatty meat and things like that. They replaced that out with more lean meats and margarine, right? So they had more unsaturated fats. They replaced saturated fats with unsaturated fats, and they could control every meal. Normally, you send people home and say, hey, you go eat, but keep eating this. You don't know what they're doing, right? So it's not very controlled. This is very controlled, right? As controlled as it's possible to get in a nutritional study. Literally, there are no nutritional studies that come close to this, right? They're all surveys. They say, hey, what did you eat last year? Swear to God, like that's out of Harvard. They're doing this. The nurses study with Dr. Walter Willett, who invented this sort of protocol of basically giving a nutritional survey. And these are all ones saying, "Oh, meat's so bad." And this is what they do. They say they give a bunch of nurses an email, and they say, "Hey, what'd you eat last year?" You know, it's like, just figure it out. Just like every meal, not, hey, can you keep track of every meal you have this year? What did you eat last year? Like, how? Come on. I mean, it's just stupid. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. And so obviously it's not going to be good. So this was very as controlled as it's possible to get in human conditions, right? They controlled every meal. They reduced saturated fat with unsaturated vegetable oils and margarine, and followed them for years. And what happened? Well, they did indeed lower their LDL cholesterol. But is LDL a disease? No. Atherosclerosis is a disease. Heart attack, strokes, those are the negative outcomes from this disease, right? So cholesterol is not a disease. Okay, so we lowered that. And that's what they're all doing. Oh, let's lower cholesterol, lower cholesterol, lower cholesterol. Cholesterol is not a disease. Why are we lowering that? Right? Well, because it causes heart disease. Oh, okay. Well, let's see. We lowered LDL cholesterol in this study, 10,000 patients, perfectly controlled. As a result, they lowered their LDL cholesterol, and more of them died of heart attacks and strokes. So why aren't we going on that study? Oh, that's because the scientists buried it for 40 freaking years. It was only uncovered a few years ago by Dr. Ramsden at the NIH, who dug this out because he found the sons of one of the original researchers, And he found an abstract for this. We're sort of talking about it. He's like, hey, do you have the rest of this study? We can't find it anywhere. They're like, hey, we'll look through our dad's things. And they were like, hey, yeah, we found this. They had on old floppy disks and things like that, and microfiche, and they had like to extract this out. And they found all this data, just years of data on 10,000 people, just massive study, really well done. And it just blew the case open. It's just they did not support at all the cholesterol hypothesis.
So whose interest was to bury that study?
Sugar companies, processed foods, they're the ones who were pushing this stuff.
Big pharma kind of.
I don't know if it was big pharma at the time, but it was certainly big food. Like yeah, well, the Sugar Research Association, now called the Sugar Research Foundation, now called the Sugar Association. They actually they paid off people like Ansel Keys and professors from Harvard and elsewhere to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol caused heart disease, when it's much more likely to be sugar, because there were a lot of independent researchers that came to the conclusion that sugar was the likely cause of heart disease. And we got to cover that up. And so it was just like the tobacco companies that, just put out a whole bunch of propaganda and fake studies that they paid people off to falsify in order to paint them, say that cigarettes don't cause cancer and aren't addictive and don't cause emphysema and all that sort of stuff. And so the sugar companies did the exact same thing, and that's not like an accusation. That's the fact. That's a part of the historical record now, because the Journal of the American Medical Association published in 2016 actual internal memos from the Sugar Research Foundation detailing how they paid off these people and what they paid them. We had their contracts. We know what they got paid. They got paid $6,500 in their currency. That's the equivalent of $55,000 now, right? So they drove off in a sweet mid-sized sedan, and they sold out the fate of the world, right? I mean, literally, that's what $55,000. What does that buy you? Really? I mean, that's what you sold your soul for, and the billions of people around the world. There are 400 million people in India right now eating a plant-based diet and running away scared from meat, who have diabetes because of these assholes who said that, right? And that's what it's for. I mean, they got $6,500, and that's it. So Ansel Keys was one of the original researchers on that. It's called the Minnesota coronary study, coronary heart study, and Ansel Keys was one of these guys who's a known paid shill for the sugar companies. And so they saw this and they went, oh, that's bad. And they just buried it. And it got uncovered, 40 years later. So if these came out in the 70s and been like, this is bullshit. And that was, people were, Dr. Yudkin from the UK. I mean, he was all over this, back then. He was saying, no, this is sugar. He wrote a book called Sweet, White, Deadly, and how sugar is causing all these problems and diseases. And as soon as the USDA, because that was the thing, one of those professors from Harvard who was paid off in those memos published from the sugar companies, one of those professors was named head of the USDA, and he was the one who authored and published the USDA declaration saying that cholesterol caused heart disease. And as soon as the teacher says so, it's like, oh, well, that was it. The government says so. I mean, how many times has that gone wrong? I mean, why are we listening to go, oh, but the government said, oh, it must be true. I mean, they wouldn't say that if it wasn't. Like, have you met the government? It's like, that's exactly what they do. That's all they do, And so, obviously people, it's not that necessarily the institution has malice, but there are people within the institution who may have malice or may not have malice, but may have ties, financial ties that you don't know about, or ideological ties. No one even knew about this. They say that, well, meat causes cancer. It's a processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen, according to the WHO. Okay, well, how did they come to that conclusion? They had a tribunal that sort of met and said, hey, let's look at the evidence and see. And first of all, you're asking loaded questions. You're saying, hey, is meat harmful? Does meat cause cancer? Let's look at what about, is meat good for you? Does meat cause good health? Why don't you look at that? Why don't you ask that question? Or what happens when you eat meat? That's an even better question. Is it good or bad? I don't know. Let's just see, right? They're asking the negative. They're saying, how bad is meat? Let's find out, And so you're only going to look at things on that lower half, right? You're not going to look at things on the upper half. And so the WHO came to this conclusion in 2015, but did they? They had certain people on that group who completely disagreed with the conclusion that tribunal came to, but they were outvoted. And there was one guy, I can't recall his name at the moment, but people can look him up. He came out publicly and said that was the most difficult thing he's ever had to go through in his professional career, because he saw them throw out hundreds of high quality studies that showed absolutely no connection or even correlation between the consumption of meat, even processed meat, and certainly, unprocessed meat, and cancer, in favor of about 30 studies out of over 800 that had very weak associations, had a lot of confounding factors, meaning that they didn't control for variables like they were more likely to smoke, they were more likely to drink, they were more likely to do all sorts of other things that could increase their risk of cancer. They also, some of these studies, they said meat, but what did they consider meat? Well, they said anything that could have an ingredient that was meat, that was meat. So pizza was
Mac.
Meat. Yeah. Fast food in general, including the fries and the drink.
I've heard that
and
before.
The bun.
They lump into one, don't they?
That's it. And so if it has meat, well, if you just get rid of all the meat, well, what are you getting rid of the meat? What are you getting rid of with the meat, right? That's the question to ask. So don't eat pizza, don't eat fast food, don't eat lasagna, don't have sandwiches. Well, that's all meat. And so obviously all the benefits come from not eating meat. No, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Right? This is the only good thing in there. You have, 50 gram, meat patty in there, and just looks like, and the rest of it's just all plants and sugar and crap. And it's just like, obviously it's that 50 grams of meat that was doing it. And like, you have to be a special kind of stupid to think that or try to pass it off.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
So that's the thing. A lot of these studies that found a very weak at best association, and association is not causation.
Do you ever get like a sinister view where they're trying to make everyone sick so that they can make money from making people healthy again? Do you think it goes that far, or do you just think it's people looking after their own interests that say own a sugar, like you own Coca-Cola, you want everything to make Coke look good?
Yeah, well, I think that's enough. I don't think you need to go further than that. I think there probably are people that don't care that this is hurting people. I don't know if they're necessarily intending to hurt people, but I think there are people that understand what's going on and that this is hurting people and that they're profiting off of that harm and they don't give a shit. The reason I say that is because I'm not stupid, but also because there's a guy named Callie Means who is a whistleblower from the big food and big pharmacy groups. Right. So he's consulted with them for years, and, bright guy, went to, Stanford and I think Harvard Business School, something like that. Anyway, very, very, elite sort of education, was in these sort of elite, circles in America in business. And he has come out saying that these people know that the processed food is making us sick. They're giving us metabolic disease, metabolic dysfunction, and causing a lot of harm. And that they're fine with that because they then sell us on the back end all these medications that don't cure these diseases. They just perpetuate them, and they just allow us to deal with them and live with them and handle them. And he said, I know that they know this because I've been in the board meetings with them when they said it. And I believe it was him, if not another whistleblower, who said that one of these pharmaceutical executives said, just in a sort of passing remark, said, "Oh, you know what my favorite drug is that our company makes?" And like, "Oh, I don't know, something that saves kids from leukemia, something, noble like that." No, he said that his favorite medication that his company made were any medication that caused side effects that they had drugs that treated. And it's like, you're a piece of shit.
Double down.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. He wants harm to happen to people. So like you're saying, like, is there a sinister thing? Well, certainly in some people, yeah. Or maybe they're just too blinded by their greed to understand how sinister they are being. But they're saying that they want, well, it's not that big a deal. It just makes their stomach upset and you just give them this and that takes care of it. Well, no, actually, because it's causing stomach upset for a reason. What's going on there? What's happening 10 years, 20 years down the line? What happens 10 years, 20 years down the line with the subsequent medication that you've put them on? And then you have them on another medication to treat the side effects of that one. And then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And you have people, and this is something that is taught in medical schools all the time. You have something called a prescription cascade, where you start with one medication for blood pressure or for cholesterol, and that gives symptoms, and you put them on another medication that deal with that symptoms, and you get something else and something else and something else and something else, and all of a sudden you have this old man who's on 17 freaking medications a day.
What's it called?
The prescription cascade.
The cascade. It's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
Going back to whistleblowers, the second Boeing whistleblower
died.
Yeah.
Suicided with two holes in the back of his head.
No, wasn't it some bacterial eating?
Sure. Whatever. I mean, yeah, like whatever they got to him. I mean, that's just like, like old monarchs and things like that. It's like, oh, he died. It was just, it was bad food. Yeah, it wasn't the cyanide you poured in it. Yeah, no, it was fine. And then we look at their blood work. And I mean, I can tell you, I can show you all the issues with your metabolism. I can show you all the problems. I can show you your fasting insulin. I can show you your fasting leptin, which is another hormone. People's testosterone is in the tank, or women are going through premature menopause and their thyroid dysfunction. A woman has PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. They may have autoimmune issues.